Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by co-host and editor of the Wolfpacker.com, Matt Carter. And that leads me to a great reason to remind you why you should subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to see Matt Carter's fresh, new haircut, and man, it is a great haircut. I don't think I've ever seen Matt look this sharp. I mean, the beard's on fleek. The haircut's looking sharp. You head over to the YouTube channel right now if you are listening to this. Smash that subscribe button and go watch this video of the most recent podcast. Take a look at Matt Carter. And if you are a listener of podcasts, remember to subscribe, rate, and review. Wherever you listen to us, we're on Apple, Spotify, Google Play. Let's talk about NC State Louisville this Saturday. Another 7:30 p.m. game, this time on ACC Network in Carter Finley Stadium. It's homecoming. Hopefully a good crowd's coming out. We've got some big things to talk about going into this game. But, Matt, first of all, I've got to ask you, how do you feel with that haircut? And do you think it's going to bring good mojo to Carter Finley Stadium on Saturday?
I don't know about the latter. Because the problem is the reason why this haircut looks good, as I explained to you off air, is I got it this morning. And the woman who does my haircut, her name is Jenna, does a real good job of making it look good. But I am not as talented as she is when it comes to structuring my hair. So come Saturday, it probably will not look like this. You're just the beneficiary, and all of those who view this podcast are just the beneficiary of the work of a very talented hairstylist at Rock's Barbershop in downtown Durham. Free publicity.
Well, shout out to Jenna, and if you're in Durham and need a haircut, go see her. Did she have any opinions about the game this Saturday? She did such a great job with your hair. I'd listen to her.
Yeah, but I don't think she has an opinion one way or the other about it.
And last thing before I drop it, Matt Carter does the quick hits after every football game, NC State football game. So, those that frequent the Wolfpacker.com, you'll see his quick hits very shortly after each and every game. He's got a lot of great stats in there, a lot of fun records. What's NC State's record when they're on ACC Network? What's NC State's record when the game's on ESPN2? Matt, what I want to know is, do you have an all-time record of NC State games the week that you got a haircut?
I don't. It would only be like one a year, too, because as I told you, the last time I got a haircut was July. So,
right, and you don't have time in the football season most of the time to get a haircut. So
I probably get one a year. I'd have to look back in the archives. I mean, that would be an interesting.
We'll find out. I mean, we'll see how this goes on Saturday. If it's not a great result, you might have to stop getting your haircut during the football season moving forward, because this is a big game ahead for the Wolfpack. We talked a lot about on the last podcast, reflecting on the Miami loss, how, good game, 1-point loss. If you're an NC State fan, yes, you're disappointed by the loss, but it doesn't kill NC State's special season that it has going on. But with that being said, there's no more room for error if that's going to continue being the case. And it starts this weekend against a Louisville team that seems like it's hitting its stride this season, coming off a good conference win at home against Boston College. And, of course, you have to address, the big news from Monday. One of the big things that we didn't know when we had our last podcast, Isaiah Moore, captain of this team, wears the number 1 jersey, a prize jersey in the Dave Doran program, leader on and off the field, kind of the captain of the defense when he's on the field, when he's off the field, in the locker room, beloved figure in Wolfpack Nation. He's going to be out for the season. He had to undergo season-ending surgery due to the injury he suffered in the Miami game. It is a huge loss for NC State, really only comparable to NC State's loss of Peyton Wilson in week 2 this season. Of course, another important loss to mention, and not to throw shade on this player, he's also a very important player, Chandler Zavala, who is doing a great job at left guard right next to Ike Ekwonu this first half of the season. He had to undergo season-ending surgery as well. So you're missing now two more starters on a team that was already feeling the injury bug a little bit. How do you think this play? I mean, first of all, what are your thoughts on those two losses the rest of the season? And do you think either of those are going to be crucial losses specifically for this upcoming game Saturday against Louisville?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Isaiah Moore, there's going to be a drop off on defense. They did a good job limiting the drop off after Peyton Wilson and Cyrus Fagan and then C.J. Clark got injured, right? They minimized the drop off. The defense would be better if those three guys were on the field. There's going to be another drop off here. The question is, how much can you minimize it? And it does come at a tricky point in the schedule. Is that you've got a very athletic, fast quarterback in Malik Cunningham who's going to have a disciplined, you're going to have to be disciplined because he has the ability to draw you in and next thing you know, you're missing a tackle or he draws you in and the leading receiver is the H-back tight end. Maybe he's trying to pull you in with a play action and get hit behind you with a play action pass. I mean, everything's got to be disciplined. They run a lot of wide zone running game, so you have to stay in your lanes. Don't let the cutback. That's what the zone running game is a lot of times about, is opening up that cutback lane. And so you have the trickiness of that. Then you kind of have a similar scenario immediately after that with Jordan Travis at Florida State. Another quarterback, probably the top. I think they are statistically the top running team in the ACC now, Florida State, ever since they went back to Jordan Travis, a quarterback. Wake Forest has one of the most unique offenses in America with the slow mess read option. And that requires a very disciplined linebacker core. So, and then Syracuse has the best running back in the ACC, and UNC has its offense. So this is probably, a tough assignment to be throwing in a new linebacker. It'll be interesting to see how they play it, but there's going to be a drop off. The question is how do you minimize that drop off? If you were going to give up 24 points in that game before, can you hold it to 27 points now? Chandler Zavala has been out the last couple of weeks. Running game has not been as good. If you listen to Dave Doran, I think he would insist it's just a byproduct of the defenses once again loading up the box. They have had good success throwing the football. The offense scored 30 points on Miami. It had 450 yards of total offense, I believe, or in that ballpark. So they still move the football. The next two defenses that NC State faces, Louisville got a real good pass rush, and they force a lot of turnovers. But I think that pass rush primarily comes off the edge, so I'm not sure, how much that impacts losing Zavala. And the Wake Forest game would be an interesting one because you can hurt them running the football. And that might be a game where you wish you had a Zavala. But at that point, Derek Eason, would have started 4 or 5 games in a row, presuming good health. Dylan McMahon's used to playing left guard, and maybe you're more moving along like a well-hung machine at that point. So I think the Isaiah Moore injury is the significant one, and we just got to see how much they can limit that drop-off. And truthfully, they just cannot take any more severe body blows like this in the defense. I mean, it's you got to hope this is it for the defense from here on out.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you're looking at a defense now that, going into this season, 10 of 11 returning starters. That was the strength of this defense. It's going to be experienced. It's going to be talented. And that's not to say that it still doesn't have talent, even if some of these, more experienced guys go out. But that experience is key, particularly when you get into, the home stretch here of your ACC schedule. Now missing 4 starters. If you're looking at the game 1 depth chart. So, and you bring up a great point, Matt, in the sense that, if you think back to the first half of the schedule, NC State really hadn't faced too many elite offenses. Mississippi State comes in with the reputation of, Mike Leach, air raid type style did a pretty good job of limiting that. Of course, the problem in that game was really the offensive inefficiency and Mississippi State's defense shutting that game down. Clemson, of course, biggest win of the season thus far, but I mean, everybody knows that Clemson's offense is among the worst in the ACC, if not, the Power 5 level right now, just due to their injury bugs and also just lack of experience on that side of the ball. You could make the argument that Louisiana Tech or Miami had the best offense that NC State's faced yet this season. So let's talk about, this specific matchup, NC State's defense versus Louisville's offense. I went back and looked at that Louisville-Boston College game. Louisville wins that game at home 28-14. Final score is a little bit deceiving, although Louisville did really have control of that game for most of the 60 minutes played. Boston College scores a fourth quarter touchdown to make it 21-14. Not a game that Louisville just kind of walked away from. It was a hard-fought four-quarter game. Part of that's due to Louisville turning the ball over 4 times, losing the turnover margin 4-3. Matt, I saw you had an interesting statistic in your scouting Louisville story, which is up on the Wolfpacker.com if you want to go take a look. We always end those articles with some interesting stats to keep in mind for the game. One stat that I've jumped out to me: Scott Satterfield 3-13 in games at Louisville in which the Cardinals lost the turnover margin. So that's one of the 3 last week. But Malik Cunningham was just spectacular on his feet in this game. 2 rushing touchdowns, rushed for over 120 yards. Really didn't do too much damage in the passing game. In fact, was pretty inefficient. Threw 2 picks, no touchdowns, had roughly about 100 passing yards. So it's kind of a pick your poison when you're facing a Louisville team against Malik Cunningham. Do you want to force Malik Cunningham to throw the ball, which he is capable of doing, by the way? He does. Of his 6 games this season, he's thrown for over 250 yards in 4 of them. But if you want to shut him down in the pass game, you want to put pressure on him, he's able to get outside of the pocket and hurt you with his feet. So, Matt, what do you think NC State's best suited for in terms of approaching the Malik Cunningham-led Louisville offense? Do you think they should force him to win the game by passing the ball, or what do you do with him?
I think, if you look at the games Louisville won, and if you look at the game that they've been very good in ACC play, they've run the football. That allows you truly take advantage of Malik Cunningham's full repertoire if you're in a situation where you can run the football and throw it. And I think that's why an early start is really key in this game. Malik Cunningham has pretty much been the quarterback for Scott Satterfield since he's been at Louisville. And I don't think there's any secret why that this is a team that when it falls behind really struggles to come back. I think they're like 1-13 maybe trailing at halftime under Scott Satterfield, because you take away what makes Malik Cunningham so good if you make him kind of predictable in the sense that you have to throw the football. To come back, you can't risk running the football and getting stopped and clock running. You got to start throwing the football, making things happen. And if you do that to Malik Cunningham, you're taking away his full repertoire. You're making him predictable. If it's a tight game or if they have the lead, then the whole playbook is open for him. And they can take advantage of his skill set. They can he can become an option guy. He can be a straight-up runner. He can fool you with what looks like a design run and then throw the ball, or he can just be a drop-back passer. And it's so difficult to defend a quarterback that's that multidimensional who can do so much. And he really is. You saw in that in the BC game how athletic Malik Cunningham is. He is the most, along with the Jeff Sims kid at Georgia Tech, probably the 2 most athletic quarterbacks in the ACC. And Jordan Travis is up there too at Florida State. So I think the key is you got to really gear up, stop the run, start strong, get a lead, and take away some of that full playbook, kind of limit Louisville's playbook, make them a bit more predictable on how they're going to use Malik Cunningham. I think that's going to be the best aspect of it. But look, this is the best offense NC State has faced this year. That's the truth. Statistically speaking, they average more yards per game than any team NC State has played this year. They're by far the best running offense NC State has played this year. They're going to be tested. And I think really the key is, can the offense start strong? They did not start strong at all at Miami. They did not start particularly strong at Mississippi State. Bad turnover in the red zone, missed the field goal, didn't take advantage of opportunities. We are entering a portion of the schedule where when you add on the injuries to what they're playing, it's pretty incumbent upon the offense to step it up, start strong, and become an offense that you can count on getting you 30, 35 points a game and 450 yards of offense a day. Dave Dorn, if you had a drink every time he said complimentary football that far this season, you'd be a very drunk man right now. But it truly comes into play now. The offense has got to step up and carry a bigger load going forward.
It's not just the quality of Louisville's offense that kind of alarms you with the loss of Isaiah Moore just this past week. Your captain, your middle linebacker, really the perfect game for him to showcase what he's best at, which is reading the offense, playing disciplined football. He's a great tackler, exactly the type of guy that you really kind of want as a spy on a guy like Cunningham. Because the thing is, you can't just put pressure on Cunningham. You can't just blitz him, because he's quick enough and athletic enough to get around some of these defensive linemen, even in times where it looks like all hope is lost and it's going to be a sack. He can slip a tackle and then hurt you for 20, 25 yards downfield. So you can't just sell out against the run. You still have to play disciplined football, and it's going to be incumbent on the linebackers to read the plays, react appropriately, and it has to be a strong tackling game for NC State. We'll see. I mean, this defense has showed time and time again that it stepped up to the challenge every time it's been called upon, really. I mean, they responded well after the adversity against Louisiana Tech. Really, the Miami game was the second time this NC State defense has received any type of adversity beyond that, or just had a poor performance at times. I mean, I didn't think the defense was bad against Miami. I thought it was more Miami's offense was pretty impressive, but it certainly wasn't the defense's best outing this season. Let's see how they respond against what should be one of the tougher tests of the season thus far. And like you mentioned, Matt, it doesn't get easier going from here on out. I mean, maybe throw out Syracuse. I'm not too worried about the Syracuse offense. I know they have a great running back, but Florida State, Wake Forest, arguably the best offense in the ACC, competing with Pittsburgh. And then, of course, Carolina. Carolina, not a great team this year, but they do have a very good offense. Their problems are more on the defensive side of the ball. So you bring up offense. They've got to carry more of a load the rest of the way, and I agree with you 100%. The offense has been performing pretty well in recent weeks. To put up, you would have liked to see maybe a little bit more in the run game against Miami. Of course, Miami sold out against the run, so you take what the defense gives you. Devin Leary had a pretty solid performance. Maybe wishes he had a few of those throws back, but an interesting stat I saw on Twitter, Matt, I sent it to you earlier. It's from David Hale, the ESPN ACC writer. He did a quarterback comparison of the 5 Power 5 quarterbacks in college football right now that have reached a certain threshold of stats. It's pretty interesting because Devin Leary, he's getting some attention, but he's not getting a whole lot of attention. I thought you brought up a good point before this podcast. I'll let you share, but only 5 FBS quarterbacks are averaging 250 pass yards per game with at least 17 passing touchdowns and at most 3 interceptions this year. There's 5 of them, and one of them is not like the rest. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Kenny Pickett, Sam Hartman, all in the Heisman conversation right now. Sam Hartman not as much, but he's kind of the guy.
Odds for it.
He has odds. That's right. And regionally, I think it's kind of one of those. We really should be talking about him more. You're not hearing that with Devin Leary, who's the fifth guy. Just like, if you're using and I know it's a little bit of cherry picking stats, but it does show that Leary has been consistent. He's been able to move the ball down the field. He's been able to find the end zone, and he's been able to, most importantly, limit his turnovers, which has been a bugaboo for him in the past. Right? We've always known Leary's ability to throw the deep ball. We've always known Leary's ability to, produce on offense. But can he take care of the football? So far, he has done that. This is a big game for him to do exactly that. How do you think NC State approaches this game offensively? Because on one hand, you think, man, this, it's been a while since that run game's really gotten going. You kind of want to see that get going a little bit more, but at the same time, with the efficiency in the pass game, you can't just abandon the passing, especially in a game that could turn into a shootout if the defense can't keep Louisville's offense off the field. So, Matt, what are you seeing for this in terms of this matchup? Where can NC State take advantage of Louisville's defense?
If you look at it just by the stats, it's through the air. It's funny, you were just talking about Devin Leary and everything he's done. The risk is Louisville pretty good at getting pressure on the quarterback. They're one of the top teams, not only in the league, but in the country in getting sacks. And I think probably as a byproduct of that, they're pretty good at getting interceptions too, right? It tends to be a correlation. And they lead the ACC in interceptions. But if you can give Leary a little bit of time, and if Leary is accurate and smart with the football, you can move the ball through the air against Louisville. And teams have proven that. I believe, I don't have the number in front of me, but I believe they were 116th out of 130 teams in passing yards allowed per game. So, they're going to give up yards in the passing game. If you can just take care of it and not have negative plays in your backfield, you should have a nice day throwing the football on them, both from a yardage standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint. So I honestly think that's going to be the best way to move the football. And you hope that everybody got their confidence back and ready to go, and in that regard, and if you can do that, if you can throw the football well, that should set up the running game for you. But you look at the two losses they had, Wake Forest and Virginia, in ACC play, those teams threw for a ton of yards. I think Virginia almost threw for 500 yards. And the thing is, Virginia was way down. They outscored Louisville 21-3 in the fourth quarter to win that game by a point, which means Louisville knew that Virginia was throwing the football. They knew that the pass was coming, and they still couldn't stop it. So that tells you that they're vulnerable, even though they got a very good corner in Keytrell Clark, second-team All-ACC last year, and he got 3 interceptions. But it almost seems like they're feast or famine against the pass. Either they're getting a sack or an interception, or they're giving up a completion in big yards. So this is the potential for Devin Leary to have a nice game here if he's on his game and the receivers are on their game and they're in rhythm and they're connecting. They'll come out, and like I said before, I think the key is to come out and start fast. I think Devin Leary needs to come out. If it was me, I'm aggressive early with Devin Leary, trying to get down the field, scoring points, getting points on first drives early, and getting yourself a good early lead. That would be my objective.
You brought up NC State getting its confidence back. That's kind of the last point I want to touch on here before we wrap this podcast up, because I think it is a storyline to watch, or just something to watch on Saturday night at Carter Finley Stadium. This NC State team coming back from a tough weekend, not just the disappointing loss, but also the loss of your captain, a big voice in the locker room, a beloved player in the locker room, Isaiah Moore. Of course, he's still going to be on the sidelines. He's still going to be an active part of the program, but it's still you're still not going to get him on the field. And I know that those players are very close to Isaiah Moore. Matt, you're the guy that's been in these press conferences this week with Coach Dorn and some of the players, getting the general feel for what the emotions are like in the locker room right now, responding from that loss. What's the vibe you're getting from NC State in the Murphy Center right now. Where is their confidence level at? How are they responding to the loss of Moore just from a mental standpoint, not just from the X's and O's standpoint? We know that'll be a loss in that regard, but just kind of what do you expect? Do you expect an energized, disciplined NC State team after a game where you think back, a few missed opportunities go your way, you probably leave Miami with a win in that game? What's the feeling in Raleigh right now going into this game?
I think there was there's still a little bit of letdown after losing that game at Miami and how everything went down, and you had to, it's hard not to, right? It's different from Mississippi State when that was game 2 or the non-conference game. You had the whole rest of the season ahead of you. You had a surefire win coming up right after that game, and then you had a big opponent to start off ACC play. I mean, that was the perfect setup to bounce back. This is a harder bounce back because you were dreaming ACC championship, still there, but it puts a dent in your path to that ACC championship, and then you throw in losing injuries and you play in Louisville with a divisional opponent, a very good opponent, a team I'm sure they respect, but there's no real strong emotional attachment to it. I mean, it's not an in-state rival. It's not Clemson. It's not the U. It's it's none of that. It's just, it's not Boston College preseason potential ACC champ. A lot of hype. This is Louisville coming off a struggling season. They're probably better than their record indicated last year. You didn't even play them last year. So you got to kind of be very mentally strong this game. But I suspect NC State will be ready to go. And the key is so will Louisville. Louisville played well in the ACC this year. They are close to being a 4-0 team in the ACC. It should be 3-1 for sure. So, like last week when we said, look at Miami as a 4-2 team, 2-0 in the ACC, not 2-4, 0-2. You really need to look at this team as a 5-2 team, 3-1 in the ACC. That's a better representation of what their record should be right now. So, this is a team that's really kind of on par with NC State in that regard. Being ready and being geared up to go is only part of it because you're playing a good team. So you got to execute.
That makes me think of a good story idea for the Wolfpacker.com at the end of the season, Matt. We've brought up so many. Last 2 weeks, it's like back-to-back Miami, Louisville. This team, it's really not what their record says it is. This is really a 5-2 team. Miami last week, this is really a 4-2 team, not a 2-4 team. At the end of the year, Matt, you should do this is what the ACC standings should have been. You go back at the schedule, you look back at all the games that you felt the results were just not correct. The other team should have won. Recalculate the records. I think that'd kill it, honestly. And if you don't go back and say NC State should have been 8-0 in the ACC, then what are you doing? What are you doing? No matter what happens the rest of the way. So, but anyways, that's going to do it for this podcast. NC State Louisville on ACC Network, 7:30 p.m. this Saturday, October 30th in Raleigh. Go back if you can. It's homecoming. Get in the tailgating spirit out at Carter Finley Stadium. I'm sure it'll be a nice night there in Raleigh. Quick reminder, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Apple, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere. You name it, we're there. Go to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Again, quick reminder, you got to go see Matt's haircut before it's too late because the next podcast, he's not going to have it this well styled. So head over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, go watch this video, give it a thumbs up, and also drop a comment while you're at it. Follow us on social media. You can follow our main account at The Wolfpacker. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will. And you can give us a like on Facebook at NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. So for Matt Carter, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.